Right, SDVoE is a consortium of over 50 members, over 700 products in the catalog, who believe that choosing one single company to serve all of your AV over IP products is a stupid idea, right? What are you trying to do? You know what's going to happen? One day they're going to not have stock. And then where will you be? I know what you say. Come on, nobody's going to run out of inventory from, quote, 68-week lead times. You're just scaremongering, Justin, like you did with the analog sunset. You can't go to the IT customer who is now involved in every AV sale and tell him, oh, yeah, this AV system, this Extron device only works with other Extron devices. You know, just like how your Dell PC has to plug into a Dell switch and has to be used with a Dell printer, right? Because he's going to look at you like you're an idiot, because of course that's not how it works, right? They got Cisco's and Dell's and Epson's all working together, right? And that's how it can be in AV over IP. We've got 50 members, all these products working together in a way that somebody like an IT director expects that interoperability. So, that's what SDVoE is. Let's talk about those three pillars, right? SDVoE is sustainable, right? And there's some of you out there that are going to say, that's it, we're done here, I'm sold, I care about the environment, I care about the turtles, I just want to make the world a great place. Done. Others of you might not feel that way, but guess what? I'm going to show you that sustainability is good for you, is good for your wallet, and is good for your customer. SDVoE is flexible. This is not just an AV transport system. It does a bunch of other stuff that I'm going to show you in a minute that allows you to meet the needs of your customer, whatever those needs are for your AV over IP system. And then finally, SDVoE is what? That's right, available, unlike some people I know. But let's talk about, first of all, let's just lay out the hardware architecture of an SDVoE system. What's great is it's the same for every SDVoE system that's ever been built. You put a 10 gig switch in the middle, you put some encoders over on one side, you can actually put them on either side, just depends on where you pull the wires, and then you put some decoders on it. Now, this is the same no matter what you do. It's one encoder per source, one decoder per display, a network switch in the middle, or switches. But then it's the software where we overlay this with an API, and then on top of that sits your control software, whether that is your Crestron touch panel, or a handheld remote, or a voice activation system, or just a totally automated, no user interface system. Whatever it is, the software is going to define what does this system do today. But that makes the system really simple at hardware design time. I don't have to think about which HDMI ports do I need to use to hook up this and that, because hardware design is not where I'm defining the system functionality. I'm just hooking up some boxes, and the software is going to define that later. So let's get into sustainability. SDVoE is unique in that we're the only AV over IP ecosystem powered by an ASIC at our core. Now an ASIC, that's an application-specific integrated circuit. One of our founding members, Semtech, has built the ASIC that does SDVoE. And that's compared to an FPGA. I'll tell you a little more about those in a few minutes. But an ASIC is a device, it's a chip, that's been carefully designed to perform one and only one function. In our case, it does AV over IP. And compared to the FPGA, which is the kind of chip that every other system out there uses, we're talking about 80% power savings, we're talking about a 30% bill of materials cost reduction. And so you say, well, wow, if it's cheaper, it's lower power, and it's high performance, why would anybody not use an ASIC? And the reason is very simple. It costs $20 million to design an ASIC. So it doesn't make sense for any individual manufacturer to make that kind of investment just to have a chip that has these advantages. The business case just isn't there. It takes somebody like a Semtech, who's a chip manufacturer, who can sell it to 50 plus members of this alliance and beyond to get the volume needed where this kind of upfront investment makes sense. And that's why you're going to see this only from SDVoE. So let's look at that power savings in a little bit more concrete way, right? Recently, one of our steering members, IDK, did an installation at the European Parliament of over 1,000 SDVoE endpoints. Now, make some of those power numbers real. A typical 1 gig AV over IP endpoint consumes about 25 watts of power. A typical SDVoE endpoint with an ASIC in it consumes about 7 watts of power, right? So let's just squint and say that those are basically the same device doing the same function, and one of them consumes 18 watts more power than the other. So that's 18 watts that's just sort of wasted, right? That's just electricity getting turned into heat and going away into space. Now, let's multiply that out. I told you there's 1,000 endpoints in this system. So that's 18 kilowatts of power online that's just being burned because we chose an FPGA-based AV over IP instead of an ASIC-based AV over IP. Now, we also know that those encoders or decoders are sitting there, powered on, online, 24/7. The reality is nobody's going around the facility flipping off all of the 1,000 AV over IP endpoints every night. So that 18 kilowatts is online 24 hours a day. Multiply that out for a year, we're talking about 150,000 kilowatt hours of energy being burned extra for the FPGA solution compared to the ASIC. Now then I went and looked up, I said, how much does electricity cost in Belgium? I got a website right here if you want to check my math. Costs about 12 cents a kilowatt hour for commercial customers in Belgium. That's a pretty good rate. I pay more than that at home in America, where I thought energy was cheap. 12 cents a kilowatt hour, that comes up to $18,000 that this end user would have to pay for electricity that's not doing anything except allowing them to have a less efficient AV over IP encoder decoder. This is what I said. Sustainability is important for the planet. It's important. Let's all do good, and let's have social good, and let's care for one another. Also, I'm going to save you $18,000 a year in wasted electricity. This is where it impacts that end customer directly. So sustainability is good for individuals as well as good for the collective. Also, let's talk about fans. I've asked this question a lot of times this week. I keep getting the same answer. Who here loves fans in their electronics? Once again, this is still unanimous. I have no fans in the audience all week. Right, well, ASICs, since they dissipate much less heat, they need a much less sophisticated cooling system. They don't need fans to keep those encoders and decoders cool. What's the benefits of that? You all know it. That's why you didn't raise your hand. Fans are noisy, fans blow dust everywhere, and fans are the first thing to fail in your electronic system. That's the mechanical stuff that wears out, right? So what does that mean? It means you get a better experience because it's not noisy. It means you don't have to roll that truck when the fan fails and your customer needs a new device put in. But again, in terms of sustainability, now a manufacturer doesn't have to go consume resources and produce a new device to replace the one that failed prematurely. Sharp NEC did a study. They were redesigning one of their LED walls, and they decided, let's try and redesign the cooling system and remove the fans. They did that, and their research showed that the product now has an expected lifespan 5 to 11 years longer than when it had a fan. So this is important. Now let's touch on flexibility. I already told you SDVoE can do several things beyond switching and distribution, and we'll talk about that in the very next slide, but I want to first tell you how. SDVoE has an API layer that's common across all these manufacturers. This is what drives our interoperability, because every single device responds to this API in the same way. So that API is all of the commands and queries you might make. You know, route encoder A to decoder B, turn on the scaler in decoder C, make a video wall from A, B, C, and D. All these sorts of commands are there in that API, and all the devices respond to it regardless of who's the manufacturer. Right? So that creates a serious flexibility through not only the fact that it can do all these things, but because they're interoperable, again, now the designer has the flexibility. He's never locked into a particular brand, right? Again, I was making jokes with ZV before. I know they have stock. But if you designed a ZV system and then maybe they didn't have a couple of components you need and you're in a big hurry, you could go swap in some other SDVoE members' products to get the job done. The good news is our members have stock, so you don't have to do that very much. Let's talk about those platform capabilities. So you already expect me to say that SDVoE can do switching and extension, right? This is an AV over IP system. We move video from one side to the other, from the sources to the displays, and we do that with perfect quality for 4K signals, for HDR signals. Everything covered under HDMI 2.0A is all covered in our transport. But add to that, because there's a processing engine in each one of these endpoints, I can make video walls. I can tell them, hey, I don't want you to show me the image. I want you to slice off a quarter of that image, and you're the top left corner. You're the top right corner. We can make video walls up to 8 wide by 8 tall using that technique. No extra hardware, it's just built right into the endpoints themselves. Maybe even cooler is we can do windowing. Now I'm going to take multiple streams from multiple sources and send those all to a single display. Again, this is something we can do today. You go buy a $5,000 window processor, you burn up 4, 6, 8 outputs from your matrix switch to plug this thing in, and you put it on one display. That's fine, and there are cases where if you really need a window processor, that's what you do. But of course, you end up really constrained to the times and places where I really need windowing. That's the only time I'm going to do it. Well, here what we're talking about is every endpoint in the SDVoE system has this capability. So imagine, free your mind and think, what would you do if every single display in your system could have multi-view capability without any additional cost? And then finally, SDVoE supports USB devices. Built into the chipset itself is the ability for keyboard and mouse transport, but many products include the chipset from our partner Icron, which means any USB 2.0 device is capable of being plugged in here, transported across the network along with the audio video, and guess what? Still controlled by that same common API that runs the show for everything else. So these are the capabilities of this platform that make it so flexible. Now that level of interoperability, that level of flexibility, means that our members and the manufacturers of these products, each one of them is able to focus on their areas of expertise, on the things that they're really good at, because it means nobody in the ecosystem has to make everything. You know, we can rely on each other a little bit. So it's not just encoders and decoders, you know, standalone boxes. We've got LED displays, we've got projectors with SDVoE built in, there are video output cards for a PC, capture cards for a PC. All of these parts and pieces are part of our ecosystem. So if your favorite signal transport partner is ZV and you've got lots of their encoders and decoders, but you need a PCI capture card in your system, you go buy that from somebody who makes it, and it's totally cross-compatible with all the rest of your ZV hardware, for example. All this flexibility means that SDVoE has had success in every vertical market that Pro AV touches. Each one of these photos here represents a real install, a real case study. You can read about them all on our website of places that people have succeeded with SDVoE. And finally, let's talk about the elephant in the trade show, availability. I've already touched on it, right? A big part of our availability story is the fact that there's simply so many of us with so many products, over 50 members, over 700 products, so that you can easily and quickly pivot your designs and substitute if you do run into stocking trouble. Now let's talk about that stocking trouble and how did we get here? Why do people not have inventory? Now I'm going to tell you more about those FPGA chips that I mentioned before. So an FPGA, that's a field programmable gate array. Picture a little microchip. Inside it is a bunch of logic that's programmable, that's flexible, configurable. And out of the box, this chip doesn't do anything at all. But I can go write some code and put it into this device and make that chip whatever I want it to be. So if what I want is an AV over IP encoder, I say, hey, Steph, write some code. And he types, and then we put that code into the device, and now it is an AV over IP encoder. That's just what it is until I change it. Because tomorrow I might say, you know what? I'm done with my encoder. What I need today is a controller for the infotainment system in my Ford Focus. Okay, we type some more code, we put it in the FPGA, and now it's a controller for an infotainment system. So FPGAs are cool because they're so flexible. The cost that comes at is they consume more power. All that extra logic for flexibility just burns more energy. They're more expensive. Again, there's more silicon in there to do this job, and ultimately that leads to a higher price. There's the availability component of this. I just told you how flexible they are. I just told you that maybe Ford wants them. So think about that. You've heard about the automotive chip shortage, right? So imagine FPGAs are in demand by every industry that builds electronics, not only AV. So that means when somebody in our world needs to get an FPGA, well, they're going to have to get in line with Ford Motor Company, with General Motors. And in general, I don't think the AV company is going to make it to the front of that line. This is why when they call up for parts, they say, sure, we'll get that to you. There's a 52-week lead time, and we'll have it right over. So that trickles down. Now I don't have chips. Now I don't have boxes. Now I don't have anything to sell to the integrator who needs this job done. Compare that to the SDVoE ASIC. I say, our poor little guy, he doesn't do anything except SDVoE. So only the people inside this convention center are even interested in that chip, right? General Motors has no use for it. It's just us. And so Semtech has it in stock, has it available to deliver to all the members of the SDVoE Alliance, and that's why the vast majority of these members have AV over IP endpoints in stock and ready to ship right now. We just have a simpler AV-focused supply chain in a way that you're not AV-focused if you're using things like FPGAs. But beyond product availability, I like to point out that SDVoE is available worldwide, right? SDVoE, we don't actually have anything to sell. That's not what we do. We're here to tell you about this technology, teach you about how it operates, and then if you like it, go buy it from our members. So it's important for SDVoE to be available to the whole world. That's why we have websites in English, in Mandarin, in Japanese. We offer our training and certification in English, in Mandarin, and in Spanish, and we're growing all those lists all the time because we want everyone in the world to know what a great technology this is and that it's available to them. And finally, SDVoE is available to you 24/7. 3 key properties of ours I want to highlight. We generate a lot of content. The SDVoE Academy, that's our totally free online training resource that will teach you anything and everything you need to know about AV over IP in general. It's about 120 courses today. Fewer than half of those are about SDVoE. Some of them are. We'll teach you all the details. But more than half of those are about bigger, broader topics, right? Do you need to understand multicasting? Do you really know what an IGMP querier is? These are things that it's good for you to know as you try to tackle AV over IP. And we teach those things to you in a simple way through video and written courseware on our SDVoE Academy. We have a brand new series coming out this summer. We just released the first episode last week called Face to Face AV. This is where I sit down with some members of the Alliance and with other big names in the industry, and we chatted about some of the big trends facing the industry. What about sustainability? What about availability? What's going on there? And we'll be releasing that series weekly or so through the summer. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified when those come out. And finally, we just wrapped up Season 2 of SDVoE Live, our TV show for Pro AV, which is an awful lot of fun to put together, and it's really there to entertain you. We bring in guests, and we talk about topics much broader than even technology. We talk technology some. I had Chris Chinook on last month to talk about DV LEDs and the trends in very large displays. But we've had other topics about how do we recruit young talent into Pro AV. Let's talk about sustainability from a bigger perspective. We had on a woman whose expertise is in sustainability for an analysis firm, like big manufacturing stuff, and it was cool to learn. Anyway, you can get all of that content on our YouTube channel, YouTube/SDVoE Alliance. Go subscribe. And SDVoE is sustainable, flexible, and available. Thanks for listening.